listen, I really hope you've told your friends to tune in, all right? Because there's information here that you absolutely need to know, all right? According to a report that was presented in South Africa just a few weeks ago, Africa is the destination for about $200 billion worth of fake drugs every single year. And these drugs are flooding markets across the continent, killing people. 80% of imported pharmaceuticals, according to this report, are all fake. So, I mean, what's the situation here in Ghana? Are we walking into pharmacies where chances of picking up a drug that doesn't work, or even worse, could harm you, are high? We'll find out from those who actually manage this sector, those who regulate it, and those who operate in it, those who can tell us facts from fiction. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Our guests are Mr. Vigil Edward Praishan, who is the head of enforcement at the head of enforcement for food and drugs at the Food and Drugs Authority. We also have Reverend Dr. Dennis Senna. He's the Executive Secretary of the Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana. We've got Selom Brandt here joining us over the phone. He's the Global Strategy Director for M Pedigree. We've got Festus Krang on the phone as well. He's the coordinator of the Ghana Pharmaceutical Traceability Strategy at the Ministry of Health. And of course, somebody who is no stranger to our show, Kwame Sapong Asidu. He's the D&D Fellow on Public Health at CDD Ghana. He's a pharmacist, a member of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society of Great Britain and the Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana. Also the Institute of Pharmacy Management International. So look, we are covered on all fronts. Our guests are the absolute best voices on this topic. Gentlemen, good morning to all of you.
Good morning, Kojo.
Including those of you joining us via phone and Zoom. We really appreciate your time this morning. We've got a lot to talk about. All right, listen, let's get into our conversation. Now, 500,000 people die from fake medicines in sub-Saharan Africa alone, according to the United Nations. This is serious, but what's the problem here in Ghana? What's the situation here? That's what we're going to find out. But we started from the end user. We went into the streets and asked Ghanaians, how do you check whether the medication you are buying is real or fake? Let's listen to what they said.
Since we don't have anything to identify that this drug is fake or not, because we don't have that much knowledge on the drugs itself, I think we buy any medicine that we think is okay. If you go to the drugstore and then you tell the attendant there, and then whatever they pick for you, just pick it up. Because Standard Board have not even given us anything to identify that this drug may be fake or original. Do you understand? Like a seal or a sticker to show that, okay, if you buy a drug with this sticker, meaning that is genuine, or if you don't see the sticker or don't see this emblem or anything like that, then it is fake. You don't have anything like that. So just buy anything that we get. You understand? So far as it's worked for me, so I'm okay.
I have to check the expiring date on it, yes. So that's why I look for the authenticity. You're also going through, like, sometimes you do a little research on it before you even get to buy it. And also, you have to get prescriptions, because you just diagnose yourself and go and buy drugs. So basically, mostly I look at the expiring dates on it.
Apart from the expiring date, at times when you hold it, it will break. It's not hard. So that's what I check normally. How the texture is. That's why.
Me, when I go to the doctor to buy medicine, I just check the date, whether it has not expired. Because I've heard somebody say if your head is paining, you can use maybe para or maybe Bico. It will help you to do this or do that. So if I go, I follow what my fellow will tell me, and I will also go and do the same. So I don't check the side effect or think that is going to affect me. No.
Normally, I check probably the brand of the manufacturers of the drug, and that's exactly what I check. Mm-hmm. So I check that one when I think that one is okay for me. My brand is okay for me, so that's what I check.
Morning Show.
right, listen, let's get into our conversation. And we've got from the FDA, Mr. Vigil Edward Proliferation. From M Pedigree, we have Selon Brantier. From the Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana, Reverend Dr. Dennis Senna. From the Ghana Pharmaceutical Traceability Strategy Project at the Ministry of Health, we have Mr. Festus Krang on the phone. And Kwame Sapon Asiedu, who of course is from CDD and a member of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society and the Ghana Pharmaceutical Society. Gentlemen, let's get started. And I want to go straight to the FDA on this one, Vigil, if you don't mind. Very aptly named Vigil. Look, once you read this report, and it refers to Africa, it doesn't go specifically to Ghana, but once you read this report, you have to ask the question, how much of this 80% fake drugs are here in Ghana?
Right. Good morning to viewers and listeners. In fact, when I read the report myself, I was wondering if really it was coming from an authentic source. Having worked in the area of enforcement at the Food and Drugs Authority for the past 5 years, I have not come across any such huge figures as high as 80% substandard and falsified medicines on our market or in Africa. I think the highest we've come across so far is around 45%.
Less than half.
Less than half of that. And even it's not as a result of substandard or being falsified, but mainly as a result of poor handling, transporting it from maybe the supplier to the end user. So this is something that I would like to tell Ghanaians, that the issue of 80% failure rate or substandard and falsified medicines is far from us as Ghanaians.
Okay, I mean, you'll forgive us because we will want to challenge that view. How did you assess and come up with the figure of 45%?
Right. You know, we as regulators do carry out periodic sampling and testing of very essential medicines. So every year or two, we define certain therapeutic lines that we sample. We have what we call the MEDARIS tool, which we use in determining the product to sample. It tells us where to pick the samples from, the sample size, and also we have levels of testing in these products. We have the 3 levels, the first, second, and third. So it is something that is scientific and has been tested.
Okay. I mean, I understand the need to ensure that the public don't panic, but it's more important that they know the truth. So you're saying that every year or two, you do this sampling exercise on 3 levels.
The testing is on 3 levels.
The testing is on 3 levels.
Yeah.
But drugs come into the country every day. So if you are testing every year or two, how are you sure that your testing is giving you a true picture?
I did mention that we take certain therapeutic lines, so it means that something we do annually. We may test a particular therapeutic line this year and move on to the other one.
Explain what a therapeutic license is.
Line. That's medicine meant for treating a particular disease.
Right.
Right. For instance, if we test anti-malaria this year,
right,
we're not going to do it the next year. The following year, we're going to do maybe antihypertensives.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Does that not create quite a lot of space for people to bring in fake drugs without you knowing?
No. You see, apart from that, we have what we call the market surveillance team. They are always there picking samples to test, just to make sure that the quality of medicine that we use as maintained as at the time of registration. Okay, we also have in place a pharmacovigilance system where professionals, that's healthcare professionals or even individuals, can report to the FDA on any adverse reaction that they may have experienced in the course of using a certain particular drug.
How big is your market surveillance team?
Yes, it's countrywide.
Yes, how big is it? How many people make up this team?
In fact, market surveillance is a core mandate of FDA. So we have more than half, close to about 200 officers nationwide working on market surveillance.
Okay, and just a quick check with you, Reverend Dr. Senna. And by estimate, about how many pharmacies and drug stores do we have in Ghana?
So we have the community pharmacies, we have the retailers. Approximately, we should have over 3,000.
Okay.
Over
3,000
retail community pharmacies.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, you've got 200 people checking 3,000 pharmacies. I mean, that's quite a stretch, is it not?
No, you see, if I say 200 officers, that's what it doesn't mean that all is done by the FDA alone. We have stakeholders that we work with. We have the hospitals giving us feedback. We have national security. We have the all other interest holders in the area of pharmaceuticals reporting to us on daily basis whatever happens on the field when it comes to adverse reactions or when it comes to substandard or falsified medicines.
Okay. Now, Reverend Dr. Senna, just before you come in, I'd like you to listen to this. This is the voice of a pharmacist who is explaining to me a process by which manufacturers of drugs can sometimes, to save money, flood the market with drugs that don't do anything. Please listen.
So there's allegedly a way some countries, especially China and India, corrupt our medication in collusion with some of our wholesalers and manufacturers here in Ghana. So if, for example, a wholesaler contacts a drug manufacturing company in any of those countries, they make deals. The active ingredient is there. That's what makes the drug expensive. So they make deals where if you want to say 100% of the active ingredients in the medication, you pay this amount, 75%, 50%, 25%, down to 10 or 5%. The lower the active ingredients in the said medication, the cheaper the drug. So a drug can be in the country and it contains only 5% of the active ingredients. Let's say paracetamol. Active ingredients is acetaminophen. Someone can bring it and it contains just 5% of actual paracetamol and the rest is just starch. So unfortunately, in quotes, the placebo effect in more cases than not works. So you can't really tell with a lot of these medications. If FDA could do regular sweeps and check drug quality of these medications, especially coming from these countries, and even some of our own manufacturing companies, you'd be surprised about what they would find. So my advice is FDA should be more proactive. Standard Board should be more proactive.
So, Reverend Doctor, this is a pharmacist admitting that some of the medication and the pharmaceuticals that are sold are made to a standard that has 5% sometimes of the active ingredient. So it's 95% nothing. People with serious illnesses are buying these medications hoping to get well, and it's no surprise that some people never recover from illnesses that should be treatable. Is this true?
Good morning, Kojo. Good morning to our listeners. And I want to say, what the pharmacists, I don't know the pharmacists anyway, but I believe what you said, that the person is a pharmacist. This is just narrating what can be from my perspective. Because if you have the kind of regulator we have in the Food and Drugs Authority and the regulatory frameworks that we have and what is done, this cannot be Ghana. Because before you even register the medicine for which you are given marketing authorization, you bring sample of that medicine which is tested, fine. you may bring the actual medicine with the right ingredients and consistency, rate of disintegration, and what have you, the parameters that you need for the medicine to be approved. And FDA approves it for use. Even before they approve it, the factory that produces it, if it's not in Ghana, it has to be inspected. Okay? FDA has to be assured that that particular factory can produce that medicine before it is registered.
And FDA does this?
They do
every
it.
drug?
They do it.
For
They do
every
it.
drug?
They do it for every drug. And they have processes in terms of, for instance, Vigil can speak to that better than I. If maybe that factory has already been inspected by the FDA and it's in their database, they may not do it, but probably they will do the processes for manufacturing that particular medicine. Okay, and it's after you start bringing in post-market, they have this what we call the post-market surveillance, where they follow up on newly registered products and deliberately pick samples and run tests on them to see whether you have maintained the consistency. What she narrated is possible, but it will be difficult in our kind of environment with the level of regulatory checks that is done by the FDA for it to just become the norm rather than the exception. So even locally, our local manufacturers are always, complaining that it's too much in terms of the regulation that is expected of them. So while this is possible, it cannot be the case in Ghana.
Okay, I'm still hoping to hear from one of our guests why what makes it impossible, right? Because I've listened to the process from the FDA. I've listened to what you have explained about the regulation that pharmaceutical manufacturers are made to go through. But you, the guys who are retailing it, when a thing comes to you, explain from your perspective, how do you know that the things you are stacking your shelves with are all genuine?
So, Kojo, the issue is this. First and foremost, the patient or the carer or the one going out to get the medicine should go to a properly registered licensed facility and ask for the pharmacist every time you are going. So be sure that you have the right person attending to you for your medication and your pharmaceutical care needs. That's important. Okay, to answer your question, you see, because what we do is medicines that we who have studied what medicines do, the posology, the formulation, and how it works, we better understand that it is important that we guarantee the safety, the quality, and the efficacy of that medicine. The patient entrusts us with that responsibility. And therefore, when we are going to get the medicine to give to the patient, we have to be sure of the source. So our supply chains have to be very robust. You shouldn't be a community pharmacist where somebody comes to you with a briefcase or a bag full of medicines and say that, oh, this one somebody brought for me and it's cheaper than what is being sold in the market, and then you procure it. No. Because you see, we have, when something, even medicines that are properly manufactured, going through there could be issues with them, maybe in manufacturing, and therefore there could be a recall. The system of recall has to be followed where you got it and with documentation. So for every pharmacist who retails medicines, they know this and they will follow it so that they guarantee the source, the supply. So if there's an issue, it can be traced.
Right. I want to bring in Salom Brandt here from M Pedigree. Salom, listening to our guests, it would suggest that, well, as for Ghana, we're safe. So your product probably doesn't really get much use here in Ghana, or it doesn't really come across much fake medication in Ghana, does it?
Good morning. It's great that we are having a conversation like this one. So, of course, in Ghana, M-Pedigree's product isn't used much, but the main thrust here is to really talk about the circumstances, the industry, and what happens. In all of this, we have forgotten to talk about the motivation why people would deal in fake medication. They will do that because the incentive is high in terms of profit. We are talking about a situation where somebody who deals in fake medicines, if, for example, you are buying an antibiotic, let's say azithromycin, which costs anywhere, for the good brand, costs anywhere between maybe 250 to about 350 cedis, and you create a substandard or fake version, which costs maybe only about 2 cedis or 5 cedis to make, you are actually making a profit of about 500% to 1,000% by the time you're able to sell it to the consumer. So what it means is that if I bring, let's say, 1,000 doses of that, and I sell them for, or let's say, even 150 cedis each, I end up making 150,000 cedis, whilst I would have spent maybe only 1,000 cedis on it. So the incentive here is that I actually make more money than a drug dealer who, somebody who smuggles cocaine will make. And I will do it right in the face of the public, right under the public eye. And I will also, stand to get a sentence, or let's say, if I'm even found out and taken to court, I would get a sentence or a punishment that won't even let me stay in prison for more than a year, or most of the time you actually even just pay a fine, and then that is the end of the story. So when you look at it from that perspective, now you begin to see that there is a very huge motivation for anybody who wants to interfere or practice in this to actually do so, and do so successfully. Because as much as there are so many interventions, and of course in Ghana, I would like to say, and I'm proud of the fact, that we have a regulatory environment that is, I would say, higher than the rest of Africa. But the problem here is that what we do have are porous borders, or what we call porous borders. These porous borders mean that it is very easy to smuggle any kind of drugs into the country without it being very detected easily. And with that, it means that if I, as a counterfeiter, wanted to infiltrate the system, I would not come through the channels that are mostly, that have a lot of high scrutiny. That is why in regulating this space, one of the biggest issues is the ability of the regulator or the pharmacists who are registered to police the market. Assuming that, let's say, all over the country there are about 5,000 outlets that sell medications, it is impossible for the FDA, for example, to monitor all 5,000 of them at the same time. And it is also impossible for the pharmacists themselves to self-police all their colleagues at the same time. So it means that while there are so many mechanisms, the mechanisms and the wherewithal or the logistics to be able to ensure that everybody is compliant at exactly the same time is literally impossible to do. However, there have been a lot of measures in place. I mean, of course, like you've heard from Virgil and you've heard from Reverend Dennis, there are so many interventions that are being put in place. But what we do need is to be able to have full supply chain visibility, where from end to end we know what everybody is doing. Because like the pharmacist who you interviewed rightly said, that we also even have to, and then for the purposes of this conversation, there are fake medications which are done by people who completely fake a registered drug, and there are substandard medications which are done by people who have successfully gone through the good manufacturing process, audits that are done by the regulator, etc. But later down the line, use those credentials or that, the fact that they have been certified to do the wrong thing. And there's a very famous case of that, which I'm sure Virgil and Dr. Dennis are aware of, which didn't happen in Ghana, but happened in the USA. I think that was about 5-6 years ago, when a company called Rambaxi in the US, which is an Indian company, actually tried put in substandard medication into the US market. It eventually ended up with a huge fine for the company after they were found out. But this was after the fact, so you would not even know how much damage they would have caused in the system. This company was fined $600 million for the infractions that they made. How are we to know or tell, for example, that similar things are not happening here? It will be very difficult, to determine the extent of some of it. But we also have to know that a lot of the vendors of drugs or medication are also not located in pharmacies, but are located on the street side in our markets, for example. You take a casual walk through Malata markets, through Makola, through Medina market, or wherever, or Kumasi, any market in Kumasi, Asafo, wherever. You will see these guys carrying, big transparent plastic bags, and they diagnose everything from hypertension to kidney disease, and they sell drugs right off the street. I've had occasion to actually even film a few anytime I walk through a market, just because of the work I do. And so we also have to understand that whilst pharmacists might be bound by ethics, a lot of these drug vendors are not bound by any ethics and also slip off the radar quite easily, and might be the big reason why we have some of these staggering statistics, because they are out or run on a parallel system that is very hard to regulate.
Wow, that's actually a lot to think about there. I'm going to bring in Kwame Sapon-Asiedu at this point. And really what we are trying to assess, Kwame, is the level of risk. Because if indeed this report is to be believed, and there's really no reason why we have identified no reason to doubt the report, and 80% of what this continent is importing is fake, what is the risk for Ghana in spite of our proven regulatory bodies? What's the risk?
Well, thanks, Kojo, and it's an interesting conversation to have, because fortunately or unfortunately, I seem to know every single person I'm having this conversation with, because I've worked in this space right from when I did my undergraduate project at the Faculty of Pharmacy through my entire professional career. And what I'd say is this: the data hasn't changed much for Africa. And so what Salom said resonates with me. I can understand where Virgil is coming from, trying to question the authenticity of the report, because we have a pretty organized regulatory authority, i.e. the Food and Drugs Board. But even that said, if you heard Salom refer to Rambaxi, you realize that even in highly regulated markets, in the UK where I practice as well, you would find out that these things happen from time to time, and level 3, level 4 recalls are issued from time to time that we have to deal with. You ask me of the risk. The risks are multifaceted. The primary risk is treatment failure. And what do I mean by treatment failure? Treatment failure is a situation that occurs when you've gone to see your doctor has prescribed a medication, the medication has been purchased rightly through your pharmacy, and the doctor expects a particular outcome. That is what we call, there's a diagnosis and there's a prognosis. And the prognosis is based on complying with what we call the concordance of all your practitioners. The patient must agree, the pharmacist must intervene, the nurses must intervene, and the doctor must intervene. And normally those outcomes are predictable. Sometimes you realize that everything is happening according to plan, but that patient is not getting the outcomes you expect. And on occasion, that has led to death. Yeah. Sometimes it leads to hospitalization. So the risks are real when it comes to treatment failure. The other risk, especially with antibiotics, is antibiotic resistance. And if you work in the sector that myself and Senna and Virgil work in, you would know that one of the huge concerns of the biopharmaceutical market is the fact that the world is running out of antibiotics. And the world is running out of antibiotics because these organisms, the bacteria that are treated with these antibiotics, are also very smart. If you don't kill them off and you expose them to lower concentrations of the thing that is supposed to kill them off, they adapt themselves to resist it. And when that happens, you have to go to higher antibiotics, which one are more expensive, number two are pretty difficult to find, and number three, research is not turning out new ones. So what happens, you get what we call MRSAs and Clostridium difficile infections in hospitals and all that, and those can even be worse than the disease that took you into hospital.
Yeah.
So those are the two major ones I would talk about: the treatment failure, in fact, antimicrobial resistance, because it's happening with antifungals, it's happening with antivirals, it's happening with antimalarials as well. So that is serious. And so when I hear Virgil talk about the fact that the highest we've seen in Ghana is 45% on occasion, yes, that is much lower than the average that the report talks about. But a cursory look on the United Nations Office of Drug and Crime website for Africa would realize that these things have been identified for a long period of time, and especially the sub-Saharan corridor is a known route, like Salom said, for some of these illicit actions. And we need to accept that we are doing well when it comes to regulation, comparatively in Africa. But we need to also realize that this is a criminal enterprise, and criminals are often one step ahead of the police. So when I listened to the colleague pharmacist who you've not named, but I think I have a pretty good idea who the person is.
Yeah, you know everybody. Yeah, we beg.
No, I think I have a pretty good idea, because you see, when I listen to the person speak, I ask myself, is this possible? Yes. I ask myself the second question, is this likely? Possibly. I wouldn't say yes to that, possibly, and I'll explain why I say possibly. Because if you look at all the policing mechanisms when it comes to movement of drugs in international commerce, the regulator is very reliant on the professionals, i.e. the pharmacists, to police. Even the best pharmacist in the world would struggle to use what we call organoleptic tests, that is sight, sound, to do, because these fakers, some of them even fake the actual authentic products. And for some of them, they would actually put in the active ingredient, what you are looking for, to the right percentage to fool the regulator as well. Because they know that because they do not have all the research and development overheads that the original product innovator has, they have a lower manufacturing cost, and they can afford to put in the right active ingredient and penetrate the market, which in some cases you cannot spot, even if you are the best pharmacist. But it's still fake. It still beats everything, because you do not know whether they are complying with good manufacturing practices. And therefore, even though the drug might contain what it's expected to contain, sometimes you might take this product and it might not disintegrate properly in your stomach, and therefore you are not going to absorb the drug. These things I cannot spot with my naked eye as a pharmacist.
Right.
These things can be spotted by a regulator like Virgil or the scientist in the quality assurance lab using disintegration tests.
Right.
The pharmacist doesn't have that to do. So I've talked about the risks and I've talked about the challenges, and I'll end by saying this. We need to democratize further the supply chain of medicines in Africa. And what do I mean? we need to empower.
If you don't mind, Kwame, I would like us to talk about the solutions when we return from the break, and we'll all contribute to that. So please hold on to that thought about the democratization of the process. I want to bring in final guest before we take a break. Just very briefly, Mr. Festus Krang is a coordinator at the Ghana Pharmaceutical Traceability Strategy Project at the Ministry of Health. He joins us via phone. And Mr. Krang, we will be talking about the solutions, which is the area you've been working in. But before you started crafting a solution with this project, you must have measured the size of the problem. How serious is the problem of fake drugs in Ghana?
Well, thank you for all your listeners, and thank you for all the panelists. In fact, they've spoken well, and all that they said, I concur with them. In terms of the size of the problem, the Ministry of Health is looking at it from the global perspective. Globally, it's a big problem. In fact, it is next to antimicrobial resistance, as one gentleman said. So in crafting the policy for the solution, the Ministry of Health is looking at it holistically, from the business point, from the financing, reports from the agencies, the regulators, and the professional groups to actually see the size of the problem. I think one thing they have also not said, which I would like to add to it.
If you don't mind, just before we move on to your point, please don't forget what you were going to say, but just some clarity on what you have said so far. Are you saying that the policy was formed based on global statistics and that no Ghana-specific studies were done?
That is what I'm telling you, that we look at it from globally. At the same time, we look at it from business point, finance point, report from our service providers, regulators. If I'm saying regulators, I'm talking about agencies under the Ministry of Health.
Right.
Their reports.
So that means you do know the size of the problem.
The size of the problem, as outlined by Vigil over there, is we have about 1 in 10 children dying as a result of substandard medication. And you can see, also it is affecting the national health insurance. If we are not able to solve the issue of the national health insurance, one of the problems is the substandard medication and fake medicines. So if we sum it up all, it's a very huge problem, which I cannot put a finger on it to say this is how wide it is, but it is a major problem.
Okay, but at least what you're able to identify that 10% of child deaths are caused by substandard medication.
That's the statistics. That's what we have now, that it is caused by. And you see, it is not really because of FDA are not doing their work, that's why it is happening. Let me ask you this question. Do you think it's possible for immigration officers to close all our borders? It's almost impossible. For that matter, you see the huge work that is there for the FDA to do. That one alone should actually sound some alarm bell in all of us, our ears.
Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to look to the solutions, okay? But listen, this is an important conversation. I want you to think about this very carefully. Children seem to be at a very huge risk as well. According to the United Nations, 169,271 deaths are linked to falsified and substandard antibiotics. That's a report that they did in January 2023, this year. Okay, 169,271 deaths linked to falsified and substandard antibiotics which were used to treat severe pneumonia in children. In Gambia, 66 children died from fake cough mixture. 9 children died in Cameroon just last month, fake cough mixture. And we're hearing now in Ghana, 10% of child deaths caused by fake medication. This is a real problem. When your child is sick, you take them to the hospital. The hospital gives them drugs, or they give you a prescription to go buy the drugs yourself. maybe you know the brands you want. But what if your child is admitted and is given medication in the hospital? Do you see the branding before they give them the medication? These are a lot of things we need to think about and figure out how to make our society safer.
So let me just find out something from you, particularly Virgil, because Selim makes the point that part of the problem is the unregulated market. So we know, we asked a simple question: can we check all points of entry in this country? Do we know all the drugs that are brought in and where they are sold?
Right, thank you. Unregulated or informal market.
Yes.
You're right. It clearly states unregulated, informal. What does the law say? The law says that if you need any pharmaceuticals or any medical product, go to the licensed pharmacy or over-the-counter medicine seller, like Reverend mentioned earlier. So why do you go to the informal market? So your risk of buying a substandard of falsified medicines at the informal market is very high. For instance, if you see a drug on social media or on any website and you decide to place an order for it, who has registered it? Who has certified that drug? The regulator cannot guarantee that, because the law clearly states that buy from a licensed source. Okay, so it's for us as consumers or patients to also abide by the rules of the game. If they say don't buy from here, don't buy from here. And talking about the influx of substandard and falsified medicine through our borders, we at the FDA, we've made it clear that you can only import medicines or pharmaceuticals through Kotoka International Airport or the Tema Port. In the absence of that, you can't bring in drugs from any other point of entry. So if we chance on you at any other point of entry, those drugs are confiscated for safe disposal. So those doing business through the Togo borders, the Elubu borders and the like, they are doing illicit business. So when we arrest you, we will prosecute you, we'll fine you like the host said earlier, depending on the gravity of the offense. So that's what the law says, and you must stick to it.
You talk about, if we find you, we'll do this to you. You've also made the point about, we've advised you to buy from licensed sellers and all of that. But the question also, for instance, that if someone is buying from social media and all of, that happens. So how do you deal with it from that point of view? The reality is that people are buying from them.
Yes, this is a new area that we're looking at. I think Pharmacy Council is taking a step. They are trying to come up with e-pharmacy. I think Reverend will be in a better position to speak to that. So there are efforts to regulate social media trade as well. So it's not something that we've just abandoned totally.
There are efforts, yes. Reverend, there are efforts. In the meantime, they're doing business.
Oh, it's been launched. It's called the Ghana National Electronic Pharmacy Platform. It's been launched, and it's for existing pharmacists who already have a brick and mortar facility, who may want to, as the e-commerce progresses, want to also be able to do that. But it has to be regulated, because the medicines are regulated products, and therefore we want to know where you are, what you are selling. So you should be on that platform, and we should be able to track what you sell from your brick and mortar pharmacy over the internet, where you send it to be delivered. So it's something that has been launched, and it's working. If I may continue, I also add that, it's necessary and important for every Ghanaian to know where they should be getting their medicines. Get your medicines from the authentic source. When you go there, it doesn't mean when you go there, it is, once you go there, that is it. Ask for the pharmacist. Ask for the pharmacist. If you don't see the pharmacist, go to the next pharmacy. You should have, just like we'll have our personal doctors, everybody should have a pharmacist friend, so that you should be, who will be able to advise you, guide you, so that you can have your medicine needs. And to the pharmacists, they know that for you to have those products the medicines in your pharmacy, you need to guarantee the quality, the safety, the efficacy, and therefore you have to get it from authentic sources. They know already. We should continue to do that. See, I chanced upon an article last time where somebody was saying because there are no jobs in Ghana, they should allow them to hawk medicines. I was like, really? Has it come to that? No. You see, itinerant hawkers are a danger to the society. They are carrying these medicines on their heads in bags, moving under the sun. You know the effect of the UV from the sun on medicines, the quality. And these are people who even use the borders to bring in this fake, unregistered, unlicensed, poor quality standard medicine. So it's important that we buy medicines from the pharmacy, and when we go, ask for the pharmacist.
I want to bring in Selom because I mean you have a product that is supposed to be the solution, Pedigree, but I heard you say that it's not used much in Ghana. Well, I mean, first of all, why not? If technology can allow us to check the source of a drug, even if we bought it on social media, if technology can help us check the source of it, surely that is the best solution, is it not?
Basically, there are several levels to this. Pedigree solution, for instance, is one that is a multi-stakeholder based solution that requires a full ecosystem of willing partners. Over 11, 12 years ago, when we started this fully, the world, especially Africa, had not even known what serialization technology is, which is basically what we innovated and for what we are well known for. So the solution here is simple and elegant. What it does is that it helps identify every single pack of medication that is sold. And what it means is that the original manufacturer, after getting their authorizations and whatever is required from the regulator, like the FDA, when they are now producing their products for, let's say, Ghana or let's say Nigeria or Kenya or wherever, they then, procure the system which puts very unique numbers on every single product. So each product has a very different number that separates it from the others. Think about it like how, back in the days when we were buying airtime with cards. You know that anytime you bought, let's say, 5 cedis worth of airtime, you scratch a card, and then it displays a number, and then you put it into on your phone, and then you get your credits. Only that this time, you are not buying airtime. It's already on the product that you are buying. You scratch it off, you check, and then you get an answer whether your product is fake or original. Right. We were one of the first in the world to actually develop a system like this back in 2008, 2009. And we operationalized it in Nigeria, where it is part of law, it is part of policy, where it is being implemented. Nigeria's pharmaceutical market is about 8 times the size of Ghana's pharmaceutical market. It's an over $2 billion a year. It's about $7 billion a year market. And we have run over 1 billion products on this platform in Nigeria, especially for anti-malarials and antibiotics, and quite a few other products which are pharmaceutical-based. And we have helped even the authorities to track down counterfeiters who are trying to use fake versions of our technology to try and infiltrate the market. And that is the beauty of solutions like this, because it involves everybody. It involves all stakeholders. It helps build a certain coherent policy, and it helps align everybody on a roadmap towards solving this problem collaboratively. What we do, or what we did, was provide the technology backbone that runs this whole system. In the case of Ghana, I would say that ecosystem has not been able to evolve to a point of convergence where we believe that serialization probably is one of the best ways to tackle it. Although a lot of documentary evidence and where the world is going to now dictates or shows very clearly that that is one of the best ways to solve it, because it solves it from a consumer-oriented point of view, and it creates an ability for people to be able to check and verify independently of any other system whether what they are buying is fake or original, because regardless of whether you are buying it from a street hawker or you are buying it from the most sophisticated pharmacy in Accra, you still have an identical system that can be used wherever you have a mobile phone signal. And it's free to the consumer to check. These are things that are being done. For example, India has developed systems that are leading to that kind of serialization. Turkey has done that. Brazil, Canada, a lot of countries are moving now towards that and making it a national policy. Because as much as we have built in institutions always need to work with channels, or institutions need to work with infrastructure or modes that can help them enhance the outcomes of whatever they want to do. And that is what MPedigree does, and that's what MPedigree provides.
Right.
I believe that we are at a point in Ghana where we have to also begin to look at these solutions more critically as part of what the conversation should be, or what the ecosystem should have, because that is the big missing piece of the puzzle that can help solve this problem holistically.
Okay, I want to bring in Kwame Sapon-Asiedu, who I think have we lost Kwame? Oh no, we have Kwame on the line. Look, our conversation, I think we're going to have to wrap it up very soon because our time is almost up. But very quickly, Kwame, if you can tell us, is technology the way forward, or are there other ways we can look at fixing this?
Well, Kojo, I did say that we need to democratize the supply chain. What I mean by democratizing the supply chain is that there would be a number of options available. So technology could be one of them.
Right.
But the most important thing is empowering everyone involved in the supply chain. The patient. The pharmacist has tools, and when I talk about tools, reporting channels to, for example, the FDA and other things. But sometimes you speak to pharmacists and they'll tell you that the reporting channels could be frustrating. We need to have a better policing of our over-the-counter sales system. And I'll finally say this. As part of the democratization, we need to shut down the supplies of medicines in the marketplace. I mean, irrespective of what anyone says. I heard Virgil say, yes, it's up to you, don't buy from them. But the people are breaking the law. Our Public Health Act doesn't allow them to do what they are doing. And it's high time as a country, if we really want to deal with this menace of, fake, counterfeit, and spurious medicines, we shut that market outlet down. But we shouldn't also do it in a manner that would lead to them going underground and as a result, threaten the supply chain further. So those are the things. So we need to think about it broadly, not just from a, digital technological standpoint.
One thing we have to conclude on is that this conversation can't end here. We have to have the opportunity for our guests to join us, our listeners to join us, and ask our guests questions and get some information to protect themselves out there on the market. But I'm really glad that we've started this conversation with you all. Please, let's agree on a time to come back and continue this. There's so much more for us to learn. Until then, let's say a big thank you to Vigil Edward Praishan of the FDA, Salon Branche of MPedigree, Reverend Dr. Dennis Senna of the Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana, Festus Krang of the Ministry of Health, and Kwame Sapon-Asiedu of CDD. We appreciate you all very much.